comes down to computers communicating.
The information superhighway can be a confusing mix of on-ramps and off-ramps.
Bitcoin is worthless artificial gold.
Is it still rat poison?
Probably rat poison squared.
We need to get into the world of, okay, this is actually foundational technology.
What the Internet of Money does is it creates a single network which can do a microtransaction to a gigatransaction.
The Internet is going to be one of the major forces for reducing the role of government. The one thing that's missing, but that will soon be developed, is a reliable e-cash.
Welcome back to Final Settlement, episode 15, I believe. And today on the show, we have Roy Sheinfeld from Breez Technology. Roy is the co-founder and CEO of Breez, which is a Bitcoin company that's focused on Lightning infrastructure and really making Lightning easier to use for both individuals and businesses alike. They provide open source software development kits like the Breez SDK, which we'll talk about, as well as solutions for Lightning service providers. And they also have a mobile app with a number of innovative functionalities. And prior to founding Breez in 2018, Roy spent many years building in the realm of enterprise software. So very excited to have Roy on the show today. A number of topics to get into, but Roy, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Brian. Thank you, Michael.
Yes, super excited for this episode. I was thinking about, I was driving to record, how do we introduce you? And I don't know if this is, I don't want to embarrass you, but I think of like the godfather of Lightning. You've been building so long in on Lightning that I feel like there's only a few other folks in the Bitcoin industry that have also come from traditional technology, but then also have been, effectively hacking at, Lightning and second layers and finding different solutions, different implementations. So really excited to hear kind of the journey, and then what's the latest, because I feel like your Breez is on the bleeding edge of things.
Yeah. Thank you for making me feel old, Michael. But we definitely started early on. I think we founded Breez with the first mainnet transactions running on Lightning. So yeah, we were lucky enough to get in early and to start building, expanding the Lightning technology. We're not there yet, but very hopeful that we'll get there soon.
Yeah, no, we'll get into all that. Maybe it makes sense to take a bit of a step back earlier. Prior to founding Breez, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your career prior to even Bitcoin and when you started to sort of grok and understand Bitcoin, and then once Lightning came along, like, making that jump to focus specifically on Lightning infrastructure. I think, at that time, 2017, 18, super nascent, like taking a bit of a leap in the sense of like, this is the area I want to focus. So I'd love to hear about that sort of trajectory.
Sure. So yeah, I worked in the Israeli high-tech scene for about 20 years. Started off as a software engineer, working on C++ projects, then .NET, different projects, but mainly around enterprise software businesses. Worked as a consultant for a long time. Then I kind of joined the company called Mainsoft, which was also a company in the enterprise software business. I was supposed to be there for 3 months and ended up staying for 15 years. And I actually helped pivot the company from one business to a different business. We started off by creating compilers and ended up as creating document collaboration software for large enterprises. We had a lot of Fortune 100 companies part of our customer base. And I was the co-founder and CTO of Harmony. We renamed the company from Mainsoft to Harmony. And I served as the CTO of Harmony for about 8 years till 2017, and that's I'm a Bitcoiner since 2013. So I actually read the white paper because my friend Akiva, that ended up founded Breez together with me. Breez, I'm the co-founder, but I have two other co-founders that were part of Harmony, and Akiba read the white paper, and he told me and my other partner Roy that we should kind of read the white paper. We read the white paper in 2013. Of course, we didn't understand anything, so we started having our lunch breaks, talking, deciphering the white paper, talking about different concepts and different aspects of Bitcoin, from the software engineering part, the cryptography, the game theory, the economics. So people stopped sitting next to us on these lunch breaks because we kind of the only thing that we spoken about was Bitcoin, and we all bought some Bitcoins back in 2013, and we kind of started following the space. In 2017, I got Crohn's disease. Crohn's disease, if some of the listeners are familiar, it's an inflammatory bowel disease. And actually, I got into a state where I was kind of completely down for 6 months. I couldn't eat, I couldn't move. I was in kind of the prime of my career, and that gave me a slap on the face, basically, and it brought me into a state where I had to reflect on why I ended up staying in bed for 6 months. And during this, Crohn's disease is an autoimmune disease where the body attacks itself, and mostly it's about it's a stress related disease. Like the trigger is stress. So I had to ask myself questions like, why am I stressful? Am I doing the thing that I need to do? Am I aligned with my mission in life? I know, like, it sounds like a cliche, but I really had to ask this question myself in order to start and rehabilitate from the disease. And part of the answers were that I'm not bringing the value, and I'm not doing the stuff that I'm supposed to do and I enjoy doing. And as a result, I started Breez. I started working in Bitcoin because Bitcoin was my passion, and I wanted to bring value in the area where I was passionate about. And that was together with the emergence of Lightning Network. So the two things kind of happened in conjunction. I got the Crohn's disease, which kind of I had to reshuffle the cards that I received. And since we've been following the Bitcoin space, we saw the emergence of Lightning Network. And I'm not sure if you remember, like 2017 was like the post block size wars, and like the narrative of Bitcoin being a digital gold was really, really strong at that time. I saw a lot of Bitcoiners like give up on the premise and the promise of Bitcoin, which was for me a peer-to-peer cash, and that, like, seeing that together with this new promising technology that emerged in the form of Lightning Network, I told myself, okay, like I need to do to deal with that. Already, like, I started seeing the problems that a product like a Lightning Network can have in the market, like the challenge of bringing Lightning to mainstream users. Yeah, that's why we founded Breez, and that's why we started Breez. And we started Breez as a wallet app, which I hate, by the way. I hate the term wallet. I hate the fact that people need to use wallets to interact with Bitcoin. But we had kind of to launch a user-facing app in order for us kind of to interact with the market and to develop the gaps and to kind of bridge the gaps that exist in Lightning. But slowly, like we're transitioning to our true calling that we envisioned from the get-go, and it's about not bringing people to Lightning, but actually trying to bring Lightning to where people are, and that's kind of the mission of Breez.
At Onramp, we believe that Bitcoin is the most important asset of the 21st century. The hard part is securing it right. There are shortcomings with keeping your coins on an exchange, but also with setting up your own self-custody arrangement. Onramp solves for these concerns. Our multi-institution custody solution maximizes security and minimizes counterparty risk, ensuring that your Bitcoin remains securely in your possession, and provides built-in inheritance planning to ensure your family is protected as well. Onramp provides peace of mind for your Bitcoin journey, whether for your whole stack or for part of it as a complement to your existing self-custody setup. For more information, check us out at onrampbitcoin.com.
I love that story. I didn't know that about you, Roy, and I think that is very indicative of we don't choose Bitcoin. Bitcoin chooses us, whether it's from the allocation and mind virus to like ultimately working in the space. Haven't been around as long as you, but have been around building and hiring, and you kind of, I'm sure you've seen this where individuals are stuck kind of in the traditional world and they have to make that decision point. And I always, in my mind, I help, provide a framework, but the decision's made for them. They don't know it yet, but they've already made the decision because no money, all the accolades. It's the framework that Bezos talked about, where he said, like, when he first started, Amazon was like, well, when he was on his deathbed, would he regret it? Because if that's the choice, like, would he regret failing or leaving D. Shaw? And it's very similar to this. Like, the individual that you want on your team and to be participating and that we invest in, you just, there's no other choice. And the money and the other thing will be figured out. And if it doesn't get figured out, well, you left it out on the field versus just like having that regret framework. So it makes sense.
I couldn't agree more. And I always compare it to artists, like musicians or people in the performing art. Like, it's not going to be easy, but you don't really have a choice. Like you said, Michael,
right.
Like Bitcoin chooses you. Like if that's your calling, you need to follow your calling. And Bitcoin is hard, by the way, compared to other startups that I worked in. The low time preference, yes, of course, it's easy to say low time preference, but when you're running a Bitcoin startup that is based on a low time preference, it's hard. Like it doesn't work in the kind of the fiat economy and the VC, the traditional VC world. Like any startup is expected to get to a significant revenue stream within 2 years, 3 years. It's very challenging to do that in Bitcoin. But I accept the challenge. Like we're here to do something that we believe brings value to the world. And what's my kind of my metric is the fact that I wake up every day with a smile on my face. That didn't used to happen. And even though it's so challenging, even though like it's what Elon Musk said about like running a startup, like it chewing glass, staring at the abyss, like yeah. So what? Like still, I'm so excited about building Breez. I'm so excited about contributing to Bitcoin and contributing to a better future that like I wouldn't choose anything else over it.
Yeah, it's very well said. It resonates with me as well. Sort of, I made the jump from the traditional finance space a few years ago, and part of it too, I don't know who I heard describe it like this, but once you start to really understand Bitcoin at a deep level, you recognize that contributing to the space in any way you can, applying your skill set in any way you can, is sort of the highest form of leverage on like just broader impact on society. And so sounds cheesy, but it is somewhat of a higher calling in the sense that once you have that deep level of understanding, you say, okay, this is the best thing I can spend my time on, and I would be foolish not to. But no, that's very, very well said. I want to go back to what you were describing in sort of your journey around, the realizing that this thing Lightning was coming out, and maybe that triggered in your head, maybe this is how we get back to that original promise of peer-to-peer digital cash. And I would love to hear, your thoughts and perspectives on from that time period. So, say 2017 to now, the sort of progression and the advancement of Lightning infrastructure, generally speaking. I think broadly for people on the edges or taking a cursory view at this may lament sort of where we are with Lightning in terms of its progression and advancement. But as someone's, being there from the early days and really, building this infrastructure very, very deeply, I'd love your thoughts on, your view of sort of state of the Lightning Network today, what else needs to be done, but really, provide some context for where we are relative to 2017.
Definitely. So when I started in late 2017, early 2018, I knew that it's a long journey and we're really running a marathon here. Like unlike other in the ecosystem that were really hyping Lightning in not really. I don't think it was. I think they set like the wrong expectations for Lightning to succeed really fast. Like we saw the challenges in the technology. We saw that how much building is required in order kind of to bridge the gap between the technology and normies. And we started working initially, even without exploring use cases and go to market. We started kind of bridging the gaps, bridging the technology gaps that allow us to bring for me, Lightning is self-custodial Lightning. Like, I don't think there's a lot of value in building banks or custodial Lightning solutions. There is some value, but it doesn't manifest the value proposition of Bitcoin. So we started kind of bridging the technology gaps that existed. We brought Lightning to mobile devices. That was kind of the first step. Running Lightning nodes in the context of your mobile device without you having to run a Lightning node in a server environment or as part of a hardware device. That was the first step. We created this notion of an LSP, a Lightning Service Provider. This is something that Breez brought to market. So similarly to the way that you connect to the internet, you don't know anything about how internet protocols work as a normal user. You just take your router and plug it to a socket at your home, and you're magically connected to a network called the internet. We tried to bring the same notion to the Lightning Network, and we invented this concept of a Lightning Service Provider that magically connects end user to the Lightning Network and kind of obfuscate all the technical complexities away from end users. You don't need to do channel management. You don't need to deal with inbound liquidity problems. So we tried kind of to bridge the user experience gap in that regard. And I think we came a long way. If I'm comparing, if I'm rewinding to 2017 till now, we didn't have wallets like Breez, like Phoenix back in the day, and this is something that came out of the collective work of people in the ecosystem. But it's mostly Phoenix, the async team, and us that kind of try to bring self-custodial Lightning to the masses. What I learned along the way is that technology is just one piece of the puzzle. It's an important piece of the puzzle, but you need to, at large, people don't care about Bitcoin. Like, we care about Bitcoin, we like Bitcoin, But people, this is something that always frustrates me when I go to Bitcoin conferences. Like you're at a Bitcoin conference, there's thousands of excited Bitcoiners talking about Bitcoin, and then you step outside of the venue and you ask someone in the street like what he thinks about Bitcoin. You'll be lucky if they know what Bitcoin is. So no one cares about Bitcoin outside of our bubble. But I learned, and we learned through exploration, through market exploration, that there is value proposition to Bitcoin, and we just need to manifest the utility of Bitcoin and to find the right ways of bringing this utility to the masses. It's not about Bitcoin per se; it's about the utility that Bitcoin provides. So, as part of our journey with Breez, we added some experiences to our app. We added a podcast player that allows you to stream satoshis to content creator. We were maybe the first or second implementation of what is known now as podcasting 2.0. We added a point of sale interface to Breez that allows merchant to accept payments without the need of a bank account. We've added a marketplace of apps that allow people to easily buy gift cards in Bitrefill or do trades on Ellen Market. And every time we've added a new experience to Breez, we saw a surge in users, number of transactions, velocity. All the metrics grew by an order of magnitude. So whenever we added something on the technical side, on kind of the implementation detail, I don't know, like zero confirmation channels or UTXO consolidation or whatever we done from a technical standpoint, it didn't really move the needle. But whenever we added an interface, a new user experience, then we saw growth. And maybe it sounds stupid in retrospect, but it made us realize that applications and meeting people needs, that's the key. Like it's true for every industry, but it's very true for Bitcoin as well. You need to solve real world use cases, real world problems in order to get Bitcoin adoption. So naturally, the next step in our evolution was to take the infrastructure that we've built for our wallet and improve that. We also incorporated other technologies, Greenlight from Blockstream, and now we're doing liquid swaps and we're using bolts. But we're kind of trying to figure out how, instead of building new experiences in Breez, how we can have domain experts and developers integrate Bitcoin payments into their own solutions. And that's what we've been focusing for the past 2 years. And it's also an iterative, there's also iterations about the SDK solution, but I think we understand much better now which users need Bitcoin payments and where to meet them. We have a very clear go-to-market strategy, and I'll say a dirty word, but I'll say crypto. There's a lot of crypto users that need Bitcoin as a mean of payment, and we intend to meet them and to provide Lightning payments and bring Lightning payments into crypto solutions. That's kind of our main focus from a business standpoint. That's our main focus right now. But we can also envision how Bitcoin payments and Lightning payments are going to be integrated into mainstream solutions down the line.
Spoken like somebody that's been staring into the abyss for a long time, because yeah, I mean, I think this is where we really, Brian had a 10 plus year traditional background in traditional finance. I was kind of 10 plus year in traditional technology, similar to yourself. And one of the things that's been missing in Bitcoin is what you just said from somebody that's external, be like, oh, that makes complete sense. But when you're in Bitcoin and you're kind of used to tinkering, you have to go through the implementation of the tech is the cool part. And what I've learned or what I've seen is, like, I remember like multi-sig from the consumer perspective becoming very big in like 16, 17, but it's really starting to like it took a while to catch up. It took a while to figure out for consumers to leverage. And so the tech is always like ahead by like 3 to 5+ years until you find the commercial applications and the commercial interest. And so it's always a cousin of what you're describing, I think of as like Frost and all these different implementations around like custody and Miniscript is like, it's great, but the market has to be able to understand Grok, put confidence. And so you're looking at least 5 years before anybody's using it, if that, because we're always going to tinker with it, but to get to market to understand it and then build what's needed or what they're looking for is completely two different things. There's one thing to build what we want. There's another thing to build what the market will A, understand, and B, actually provide value.
Yeah, the technology is just the foundation, and then you need to iterate with the market in order to find the right product market fit and to bring the solutions to market. The advantage that I have, and I think you guys have as well, is that we have some gray air. Like we're not hackers, we're here to run the marathon, and we understand that technology is just one piece of the puzzle. And I think Bitcoin, in general, we need more people like that in the ecosystem. It's not just about the technology. It's a lot about marketing. I think we're missing a lot of talented marketers in the Bitcoin ecosystem. I think we're missing product designers. I think we're missing creativity. I think we're missing a lot of stuff that exists, that does exist in other ecosystems, and we're lacking because of our complete 95% technology focus. And it's right. It's true that we're in the technology phase of Bitcoin. Like we're just taking our baby steps in kind of crossing the chasm. But it doesn't mean that we don't need to kind of pull these people in order for us to accelerate the go-to-market process.
Yeah, that also it reminds me of Roy, you have a Medium page that has some very insightful commentary on there, and one of the articles that you've written is essentially saying orange pilling has stopped working, or at least in the traditional sense of what people have been doing for years in terms of trying to convince people of Bitcoin. And it really resonated with me, and Michael and I have talked about this, but the best form of new Bitcoin adoption is arguably someone who's using Bitcoin and they don't know it. And that speaks to what you're saying around the actual utility, the use cases, leveraging these superior monetary rails to bring to market experiences that are better and actually unachievable on the traditional rails. And that I think is the point of that piece that you put out, which is basically like, that's a better way of orange pilling. You do it without even bringing up the word Bitcoin.
Yeah, we live in a meme culture, and orange pilling is a meme, and it's been working. I have a friend, Sergey, is the CEO of Bitrefill. He always asks, like, why there are no conferences around VPN? Like, why there's no VPN conferences? Why are we doing these Bitcoin conferences? And that's a valid question. I think there's I'll say something maybe a bit provocative, but I think there's a lack of confidence among Bitcoiners with this orange pilling. It's either you're in or you're out. It's either you're orange pilled or you're not, and it's kind of they are avoiding the real discussion. And the real discussion is, what's the value proposition of Bitcoin, and do people care about the value proposition of Bitcoin? How can we bring the utility of Bitcoin to the masses? Is there a utility that applies to the masses? I think all of these questions are questions that are not being answered if we'll continue with this orange pilling, and even what Satoshi said, like, if you don't get it, I don't have time to explain it to you. That's not the way software expands in the world, and that's not the way technology brings innovation to the world. You don't need to explain I have another article where I compare Bitcoin payments to digital camera. When the digital camera first came out, it was used to replace the film camera. and it didn't change anything really in the way that users and people behave. Like they just had a better way to develop pictures, maybe more faster ways to develop high quality pictures and all of that. But our behavior, our human behavior didn't really change. Only the convergence of the digital camera into mobile devices, that really kind of brought a whole set of use cases and really changed human behavior. Like we can't really eat dinner before taking a picture of it, and we can't really interact with other unless it's in an Instagram post or a TikTok story. And that's the way digital camera actually completely changed human behavior. And I don't think we're there yet in terms of Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin has the potential. I'm 100% sure Bitcoin has the potential of changing human behavior. I think the fact that we haven't been able to manifest it's our problem. And it's a problem that we need to solve. Value needs to move the way information moves. The way that we interact with information on the internet, there's no way that we won't be able to interact with value in the same manner, but we're unable to manifest this utility to the masses right now. And instead of trying to do that and trying kind of to find the use cases and to solve the problems and to find where technology converge, AI and Bitcoin or Nostr, social and Bitcoin, like instead of exploring more use cases like that, we're constantly talking about orange pilling and talking about all the narrative of Bitcoin, which is good for creating the first kind of to jumpstart the ecosystem, but I don't think it scales, and I think we need to scale through technology.
That's exactly right. I mean, we talk about this a lot. It's almost feels like you need to make your products, if you really want to scale and make a big difference, is you need to make your products easy enough for somebody that cares nothing about Bitcoin to get access, but with the quality of somebody that's looked at it for 10 years to appreciate.
Exactly.
Right. Like,
exactly.
and that ties in the taste, marketing, all the things that the best entrepreneurs have done. But we're so early. And so what I used to say, and it got me in trouble, but I still believe it, is some of the best companies have never been built yet in Bitcoin. And the reason why is because that means that the best entrepreneurs do not even know about Bitcoin. They know about it in the name of Bitcoin, but they don't know about it like the way we understand it. And because of, and it's easy to understand when you think about it through that lens, because the Bitcoin's $66,000. If everybody knew about it, or the best entrepreneurs, it'd be $660,000 or $6.6 million. And when those individuals come in and grok Bitcoin deeply, but then also understand commercial behavior and how to market and build products, that's when you get to that. That's when you get to that kind of taste. And historically, everyone that deeply understands Bitcoin, they want to build things for the hardcore person. And the hardcore person, we can't expect every net new Bitcoin person to come in to get to that level. It's just not feasible. That's not how people operate. We're going to get to some total addressable market of people that get Bitcoin deeply and are evangelical, and then we end up as a VPN, to your analogy of like, there's no more conference. It's just money. It's just the thing that you use. So yeah, it's again, going back to the abyss, when somebody has a background in traditional, technology or entrepreneurship, and then has been looking around, and it's the idea maze that everyone talks about from an entrepreneurial perspective. It's like, everyone knows how successful Amazon's been. Nobody knows how unsuccessful they've been, how many times they've been wrong, right? And that you go through the maze and you back out and you go through the next door, and you have to continue to go through until you find the way. There's no other way. And when
there's
you go
no way
through
to find a way without doing that.
Exactly. And when you go through that, you come to these conclusions of like, oh wait, we've been designing the wrong thing for the wrong people. You got to design with them in mind, but at the end of the day, it has to be easy for somebody's grandma to pick up and say, oh, this is why it makes sense.
Exactly. And I agree with you again, 100%, that we're not there yet. I think that, again, the potential of Bitcoin is in the convergence of it to some other domain that we haven't seen yet. And that's why our mission right now is kind of to lower the barrier of entry of a domain expert to interact with Bitcoin payments. Like, it should be that simple for a developer out there to tinker with Bitcoin and to start engaging in transferring value the way we transfer information. It should be kind of on the same level of ease of use, and basically that's the way we're designing the next wave of the Breez product, is kind of constantly lowering the barrier of entry, constantly making it easier and simpler for other domain experts to tinker with Bitcoin and to integrate Bitcoin. And I think the potential there is huge.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Maybe you could go a little bit deeper on, particularly what Breez is focused on today, and how you're, working to achieve that vision that you just outlined, of making things more usable, reducing those barriers to entry for developers, and like Michael is saying, just smart entrepreneurial people to be able to add value to the space.
Yeah, definitely. So Lightning is complicated. It's if you want today, without solutions like the Breez SDK, to embed when I say Bitcoin payments, I mean Lightning, because another one of my articles is where I talk about Lightning is the common language of Bitcoin. Like the way Bitcoin speaks right now in terms of payments is through the Lightning Network. And we see that where Lightning is becoming the interface of products like Fedi and products like Cashew and products like R. Lightning is becoming kind of the interface and the common language between different Bitcoin infrastructures. But in order to speak Lightning, you need to do a lot of heavy lifting. What we're trying to do with the Breez SDK is to obfuscate all the heavy lifting from you, exactly like what we've done with the Breez wallet from an end user standpoint. We're trying to do that from a developer standpoint. Developers don't need to know anything about Lightning. They just need to call an API in order to send payment or receive a payment. And we want to make it simple and stupid for developers to integrate Bitcoin payments into their solutions. We started off by basically it's an end-to-end holistic solution. So when I say send payment, I mean that you have a Lightning node, you have a built-in LSP, you have on-chain interoperability. There's a lot of pillars, technology pillars that you need to set up in order to kind of to provide this holistic experience. What we're doing at Breez right now is iterating on that product and finding ways to make it easier and easier, and to kind of obfuscate the complexities from developers and eventually end users. Our last iteration is what we call a nodeless implementation. So we have two flavors of the SDK. We have a native implementation where we provide a hosted, fully featured Lightning node running on a cloud infrastructure using the Greenlight infrastructure from Blockstream. And we have customers like Relay and Green from Blockstream and Bitbox that integrated that native flavor. But now we added a new flavor to the SDK, which is the nodeless implementation. And in the nodeless implementation, you don't even need to run a Lightning node in order to interact with Lightning. The underlying infrastructure is Liquid. We're using Liquid as a way to store Bitcoin for end users. And the Lightning interface is done through submarine swaps. So if you want to make a Lightning payment, you're doing a Liquid to Lightning swap. You want to receive a Lightning payment, you're doing a Lightning to Liquid swap. And it's kind of what Aqua has in the Aqua wallet, but it's kind of encapsulated in a very simple API that every developer can integrate. And there will be other iterations on the Breez SDK as well, maybe with stablecoins, maybe through other technologies other than Liquid.
Yeah. One thing that you mentioned in there, going back to Lightning being this common language, I think that is perhaps, I think people are beginning to come to that conclusion. But I think early on, if we rewind 5-7 years, I think there was more of a thought that, well, there's going to be these different attempts at scaling layers for Bitcoin, and maybe it's going to be winner take most. I think what we've started to see over the past few years is that it's not going to be winner take most. There's going to be many different scaling approaches, scaling methodologies, different layers, whether they're layers 2s, 3s, 4s, whatever you want to deem them. But Lightning is actually different than all of those attempts in the sense that it's this connective tissue that ties all these potential layers together. And that was pretty eye-opening for me, because I think early on in my understanding, I was, a little bit more thinking, well, if Lightning doesn't work, then what's going to be the one that does? And that's not really how I think it's now currently playing out.
I agree. And from early on, you can read my earlier articles. I always said that Lightning isn't one size fits all. And I think once you understand, forget the technology, let's talk about Lightning economics. Once you understand the function of the LSP, the cost, let's talk in startup terms, let's talk in CAC and LTV terms. Once you start to kind of formalize what's the economics of Lightning, you understand that Lightning isn't one size fits all. And even if you had if you don't have like the constraint of the Bitcoin main chain in terms of the number of transactions and the number of channels that you can open and so forth, the economics of Lightning, they work when you understand your users. When you understand the usage patterns, then you can build a solution that accommodates a need, their specific use case. You can't have one LSP. By the way, it's very similar to traditional financial offerings. You don't have one bank for all types of users. You have a commercial bank, and you have a retail bank, and you have different products that service different types of users. And it's exactly the same with Bitcoin. You can't have one LSP that serves generically all types of users. You need to tailor the right economics to the right audience. And once you start to understand that, you understand that there may be other solutions, what I call the last mile problem, that not every user will want to pay for a UTXO. If there are users that are not willing to carry the cost of a UTXO, what are the solutions that we offer them? So then emerge solutions like Fedimint and ARC. And by the way, we're talking again in a very small bubble of a Bitcoin ecosystem. We're ignoring the hundreds of Bitcoin layer 2s that are popping up, and staggering amount of VC money is funneling their way. So what will be the common language of Babylon and Botanix and the hundreds of Bitcoin projects that are you can argue if they're native Bitcoin or not native Bitcoin, it doesn't really matter. People will use these layer 2 technologies, and Lightning has a huge advantage in that regard, because you don't have to maintain a global state in Lightning. Basically, the state of Lightning is maintained in the Bitcoin main chain. If all these layer 2s are interacting with the main chain, it means that they can easily have a Lightning interface. You can't say that about other layer 2s, because if you want to use them as kind of the common interface, that means that every project needs to bring a new stack of state in order kind of to interact with another layer 2. And the ingenuity of a channel, of a Lightning channel, the fact that it doesn't carry a global state, only the peers need to understand the intermediate state of the channel. That I think is very powerful for Lightning to be served as a common language going forward between native Bitcoin and between non-native Bitcoin as well.
Does your Bitcoin custody setup keep you up at night? Maybe you still have coins sitting on an exchange worried about hackers, Or maybe you've set up your own self-custody but don't feel safe with your Bitcoin savings stashed on a little plastic device in your desk drawer. Gain peace of mind with Onramp and our multi-institution custody solution. Here's how it works. Onramp creates a dedicated multi-sig vault just for you. 3 separate institutions each hold a key. Onramp, BitGo, and CoinCover. But none can move funds unilaterally. Instead, only you have control over your coins. With Onramp's multi-institution custody, you'll sleep better at night knowing your Bitcoin is stored with best-in-class security on-chain with fault-tolerant multi-sig. If you believe your Bitcoin is going to be worth a lot someday, don't jeopardize that future by exposing your coins to hackers on exchanges, $5 wrench attacks in the real world, or perhaps most importantly, the risk that you might screw something up with a highly technical self-custody setup. Onramp's multi-institution custody eliminates single points of failure, reduces your personal attack surface and technical burden, and provides access to financial services that allow you to confidently secure your Bitcoin, including inheritance planning, insurance-backed warranties for all balances and transactions, low-cost trading, and more. Bitcoin is a once-in-a-species asset. Secure it right. Learn more at onrampbitcoin.com.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. There's multiple levels. This might be a like weird or dumb analogy, but I think of it as like the continents and the globe are like the main chain, and then the ocean is like the universal way to get across. And you don't care how you get the parcels to the other thing, and like so the ocean like provides you this experience, and whether it's a ship or the different type of ship, how it gets there, you just care about it getting there, and then you take different forms of like trade-offs with the counterparty risk, and then ultimately you never know, you just get adoption, and somebody can pontificate which one's right or wrong, but at the end state it's over time the Lindy proves out which one was right or wrong, and it's still too early on certain respects, and everybody has their own ideas of counterparty risk and what they care about, but at the end of the day, like, we need the other 7 billion people to get on board, and if it works out and it wasn't our vision of it, it doesn't really matter when you think about it. It's what only matters what consumers use. And this kind of ties into, it's really interesting on this notion. I would love to hear more about Blockstream and the what's their like kind
Greenlight
of
or Liquid?
Liquid, because Liquid's been looking out there for a while, right? And I think of Liquid as this hybrid of kind of Fediment structure, which is kind of what we do on multi-institution custody. It's this notion of like the keys, you're pushing the risk to a trusted group of key partners. It has counterparty risk, but at the end of the day, it allows for a more seamless transfer of BTC through a programmatic way that was historically a little bit harder when everybody had to open up a channel. So it ties it pegs the Bitcoin over here. So when Pierre first brought this up, I thought it was insanely elegant for what you guys are trying to achieve, because it's not trying to achieve all the Bitcoin stored. It's trying to like move these assets over in a way that reduces counterparty risk, but also increases the ability for volume. And so I'd love to just hear, that was a good like understanding of it on a high level, and then how you guys came about that and where you see that going.
Definitely. So Liquid is, in my mind, is and you alluded to that, is a global federation, basically. So I really like, for example, the Fedi project and Fedimint as a technology. The problem with Fedimint is someone needs to set up a federation, and there's no global federation in the Fedimint concept. Like, you need to find the federation members, you need to make them the trustees of the federation, and setting up locally for regions, for organizations. And that's something that we have very hard time using, because you want a plug and play product. So if you want a plug and play product, you basically need to opt into a global federation. And when you take a look around, Liquid is a great technology for that, because you have already the federation set up. You have already the trust model is already very explicit and very well explained. And now, if you're opting into accepting the trust profile, there's not a lot of work that needs to be done. You just need to create the Lightning interface on top of Liquid in order to speak Lightning as a common language. Not everyone will accept Liquid as the global federation, and that's why we need to aspire to build a more native Bitcoin solution, because by the end of the day, in Liquid, you peg BTC to LBTC, and you trust the federation the federation to with your BTC, with your pegged BTC, and you convert them to LBTC. And there's no unilateral exit without the permission. It's becoming from a permissionless chain to a permission chain. You need the permission of the federation to peg out. But once you accept this trust profile, I think it's a much easier solution than run a Lightning node natively on a mobile device or in the cloud. It doesn't matter, because once you have a native Lightning solution, you need, even if the state isn't global, you need to start managing a state. That's one. Secondly, there's no way to share the cost of a UTXO. The biggest advantage of a solution, a sidechain like Liquid, that it allows you, and all of these solutions, Arc, Fedimint, sidechains, they're all trying kind of to share the cost of a UTXO. That's kind of the underlying technology. It means that you don't need to have the real estate allocated in the main chain. You can have a shared apartment where the real estate is shared among all the residents of the apartment. And if we're going back to your analogy of Lightning being kind of the railways, Lightning is the railways, Lightning is the highway, but when you get into a specific piece of real estate, the question is whether you get into an individual. An individual can buy private homes and private houses and buy real estate on the main chain. That's kind of the villa. But you can also get into a shared apartment building, which is kind of my analogy to a sidechain like Liquid, where a lot of residents share the same real estate. And that's what we're trying to do with Liquid. I think Arc is a very promising technology that is trying to do the same, even in a better way, because you're not using a different asset. You're using a native Bitcoin with other trade-offs. Of course, there's always trade-offs. So yeah, I think
that's
going
exactly
forward,
what I was going to say.
Yeah, I really liked what you said, Brian, because I think the future is not is very diverse in terms of solution. I think we're going to see a lot of different solutions that are tailoring or serving different use cases and different needs. They will all choose the best solutions for their problem, and Lightning become kind of the glue between all these different technologies.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It always comes back to trade-offs. And the really interesting thing about Liquid to me, and it sort of aligns with everything we've talked through here, is a sense that, I forget exactly the year that Liquid went live, but I think there hadn't been a ton of adoption, and I think it was primarily a result of people being concerned around the trade-offs of having that peg in, peg out situation, and an alternative token where there's a lot of.
Not sure. I'm not sure I agree. I think Liquid suffered from the same disease that Bitcoin in general suffered, and it's too much focus on technology, less focus on go-to-market. I think Liquid had USDT before Tron. Like if Liquid was tried to kind of fulfill a very specific use case, I think they would have killed it. I think Liquid tried to be the jack of all trades, and they weren't able kind of to find the right product market fit for liquid. So they try to do trades, and they try to do stablecoin, and they try to do so many things, and to be a generic infrastructure, which is good. Now we companies like Breez, like there are other companies that are building on liquid, Stoker, and even the first Arc implementations are being done on liquid. Now there are companies that are building on liquid as a technology. And I think that's the way to bring liquid to market.
Yeah, absolutely. I think where I was going to go with that's helpful context. And I think you're right. I think where I was going with it was I think there has been a bit of a realization more recently that it just makes things easier. Like it allows these more commercial use cases to be more accessible to folks. And I think developers are grokking that as well, and being more willing to work in Lightning or work on liquid and integrate liquid. I'm curious, going back to this concept of the peg in, peg out. Like, what are your thoughts around, like, is a quote unquote trustless peg system feasible? What's the closest we have to it, and how do you think that plays out over the next 5-10 years of development?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there are two pillars. One is how to make it less trusted, meaning in liquid, for example, now you need 11 out of 15 signatures in order to do a peg in, peg out. I think with Taproot integration, you can increase the order of magnitude of people participating in a liquid federation, and that's going to change and reduce the trust significantly. That's one aspect. The other aspect is projects like a BitVM, and for example, there's a rootstock that is working on a trustless peg in, peg out using BitVMX. I think it's feasible. I think it's early days, but I think BitVM for doing a trustless peg in, peg out is a very promising technology. And I think we're going to see eventually, I'm not a prophet, I can't tell you exactly when, but I think we'll see major technical advances in doing trustless peg in, peg out into sidechains using projects like BitVM.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. One question, a little bit sort of higher level, almost philosophical, and I've read your commentary on this as well, but I think for a while there was this connotation that in terms of the monetary sort of use cases of money and specifically Bitcoin, that there may have been a sort of a logical progression of first Bitcoin needs to be a store of value, then it moves to a medium of exchange, and then it's a unit of account. And I've sort of come to a bit of a realization from listening to folks like yourself, and then we also had Bitstein, Alex Goldstein on the pod a few months ago, and he had some similar comments around it. You know, it's almost like the medium of exchange, or the store of value use case, I should say, is actually sort of just a subsegment of the medium of exchange use case, in the sense that it's just you're pushing out the duration of that spend, right? So it's
exactly,
I'm not spending it today, but in 10 years I might want to spend it. So it's still a medium of exchange use case. It's just, what is your time horizon on that? Curious your thoughts around any of that. And did you come to that conclusion more recently, or have you always thought about it like that?
No, I explained why I started Breez. I wanted to kind of to help Bitcoin transform from, or kind of to break the store of value narrative and kind of manifest the medium of exchange aspect of Bitcoin. That's why I started Breez. But I wrote an article called "The False Dichotomy Between Store of Value and Medium of Exchange," because the discourse, like I kind of was fed up with the discourse of people trying kind of to push the narrative of Bitcoin is first store of value, then a medium of exchange. And I wanted to kind of to explain why I see as the two reinforce each other. I agree with Alex. I think most of the assets in the world are both. And I think Bitcoin is both. It's a store of value and it's a medium of exchange. And no, it's not yet a unit of account. But if you take a look at Bitcoin, and you understand, and in the article I give example, like historical example about other assets like ingots and gold and even the US dollar, how the medium of exchange aspects are intertwined with the store of value aspects of the asset. You understand that you can't separate one of the other, and store of value is a medium of exchange, just in a long time span, and a medium of exchange is a store of value on a very short time scale. The number one use case of Bitcoin is what? People are trading Bitcoin in huge volumes. Like people maybe aren't aware, but Bitcoin is an asset of a $1 trillion valuation right now. But in every year we trade Bitcoin. In 2022, it was something between $15 trillion to $38 trillion. That's kind of the velocity of Bitcoin. So people trade Bitcoin a lot, and the number one use case of Bitcoin is trading it as a speculative asset. When you trade Bitcoin as a speculative asset, is it a store of value or a medium of exchange?
Yeah, it's an interesting point you brought up because we experienced this in the Middle East without like saying too much, where we saw between India and like Middle Eastern countries where there's very wealthy people that exchange very large sums of Bitcoin for land and other things, and they don't hold the Bitcoin for very long. It's just, I'm talking about like tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're effectively doing what you're describing. They know it's not going to zero, but they're also using it as a way to move capital across countries.
Yeah, even gold is traded on a $150 million a day. Like that's the transaction volume of gold. So in the article, basically, I claim that there's no such thing. There are, by the way, edge cases. I give example of cigarettes in prison, for example. It's a great medium of exchange, but they go stale after a few weeks, so it's not a store of value. Or something like a stolen Picasso. Yes, it's a great store of value, but you can't really exchange it. So there are edge cases, but most of the assets are always both. Definitely Bitcoin. It doesn't mean that Bitcoin doesn't have its shortcoming as a medium of exchange. And it doesn't mean that volatility hinder adoption. It doesn't mean that capital tax gain hinder adoption. Yes, there are still problems to be solved, but Bitcoin is being used every day a lot as a medium of exchange. And I've kind of fed up with the memes of, okay, you don't want to buy coffee with Bitcoin or whatever. No, it's not about that. It's about how do we make it the best asset in the world. And in order to make it the best asset in the world, it needs to be tradable.
Yeah. Roy, what would you say the biggest difference in your mind is from gold and Bitcoin? Personally, I think this is going to be something different for. I don't know if there's anything objectively that would be said, but
I think also first, I think all this stuff about intrinsic value is I don't subscribe to that. Like people don't use gold because it's a good conductor or because you can make jewelry out of it. And same goes for Bitcoin. Like the value that we give to Bitcoin is the value that we think as a collective Bitcoin is worth. I think you can't really compare Bitcoin to gold because of the physical property. Like it's a native digital asset. Gold isn't a native digital asset, and you can't make it a native digital asset. So for me, the fact that you can move Bitcoin at the speed that you move information, the fact that you can have a global currency based on Bitcoin, the divisibility of Bitcoin, all the medium of exchange properties of Bitcoin, for me, are far better than gold, and that's why I think Bitcoin has a potential to take on gold as an asset. But I think that the key is by manifesting the medium of exchange properties of Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think part of the narrative of adoption for the past few years have been, well, one, like, you know, the institutional players are getting involved, and for them, the common theme is, okay, Bitcoin is digital gold. And frankly, it just doesn't do it justice, though. To your point, is like it because it is actually an improvement on gold in so many different ways. I forget who said this, but I saw it on Twitter a few weeks ago. But it's like Bitcoin isn't digital gold. Gold is just analog Bitcoin in the sense that for thousands of years, it's like the best we could come up with to have this thing that was scarce, durable, portable in some sense. But we didn't have the technology for Bitcoin, but gold was the best we got to.
Yeah, and everyone mentioned Gresham law, of course, like, and they don't understand that Bitcoin is a superior medium of exchange. We didn't have that in the past. I'll call out Saylor for a second, if I may. If you saw a Saylor video from today, like there's a clip running on Twitter where he talks about the crypto anarchist or whatever, trying to sell their hardware wallets. Like he basically called out the folks that are preaching "not your keys, not your coin" as crypto anarchists, and because they're selling some agenda. Well, Michael Saylor also is selling an agenda, and the agenda and why Bitcoin is being portrayed as a medium, as a store of value, and not as a medium of exchange, because these individuals, Saylor wants you to buy MicroStrategy stocks, and the ETFs, the BlackRocks want you to buy their ETFs. It's a very once you have this narrative of Bitcoin as an asset that is not transferable and you don't need to own directly, yes, why not opt to buy an ETF or to buy a MicroStrategy stock? So everyone is pushing their own agenda. Everyone has an angle. I have an angle. I admit that is a disclaimer. I want people to use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, and that's the agenda that I'm pushing. So when you read something, and again we're coming back to the meme culture that we all live in. When you see a meme, when you see kind of a narrative that is there, try to understand like what's the agenda behind the narrative, and understand why Bitcoin is being portrayed as a store of value, because the reality shows it's definitely not just a store of value.
Yeah, it's such a great point. We talk about this a lot. Everybody has their agenda, everybody's pushing it, but this goes back to what we talked about on which vessel is the best to get used. Well, it's still early, so you have to look at the agenda, you have to look at context, instincts, commercialization, all the things, and the market will determine it. I think where Saylor and both sides of those are right and wrong, in that like Saylor is saying that we need to institutionalize the space, we need regulations or whatever, and there's a little bit there. On the other side is not your keys, not your coins is an important function to prove that the system's right. But both sides are wrong in that if it goes back to the self-custodial, where you started Lightning as non-custodial and you realize, well, maybe not everybody cares about that. In the same way, if we expect everyone to write 12 words on a plastic device, they may never come into the space. And do we care about them doing that, or do we want them in the space? In the same way, Saylor has to put air cover over the fact he uses a centralized custodian and he's at any point at risk of having all of his assets lost. And we talk about this because we basically sit in the middle and we say that multi-institution custody might actually be a way the vision of the future looks like, because you basically get the benefits of both while being able to always take delivery and keep the system honest, which ties back to the mints and liquid. It's like, I think a big part that the market has missed is the fact that I'll take a little bit of a different stance to give you guys, like, if we all agree gold was money as the bedrock of society for thousands of years, right? So it's not 12 trillion, it's just the way capital was exchanged. That I take the stance that the difference between gold and Bitcoin, if we had to pin it to one, is multi-sig, because you take an asset for the very first time that's universally accessible but can be held by different people. It's basically governance built into the protocol, built into that one piece of gold, and that had never been done before. And that's how you can get second layers. That's how you can basically put all these mints together. And that's the like innovation in mind, not the innovation, but it's the thing that makes it different because, to your point, Roy, you were saying about we can transfer Bitcoin around, even though it's not the same. It kind of is the same. Like you could transfer dollars around a wire. You could do a bunch of stuff theoretically around a gold standard, but you still have counterparty
Not
risk, which,
without not without
well,
a
you,
third party. That's
well,
the value proposition.
but it's
Yeah,
very similar with like anything we talked about today. There's still some layer of counterparty risk, and we all had to figure out what we could when it comes to
definitely.
that. And so the idea is, well, how do you get to the fastest point to take the delivery of that? That's where like dollars and gold are very different, right? It's because there's too many claims on the dollars, and you could basically, they seize the gold. All the things we know about the dollar standard on Bitcoin, it's a little bit different because you can keep the system honest. You effectively, like, if a bank run happens, you can move the assets over. So that's like, in my mind, that big differentiator is this notion of governance built into the bank, and then it allows for the movement to be the alarm bell to sound. You move the money, and that confiscation risk becomes a lot different of a profile.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it's a long conversation. Like I don't know if we can get into that, but basically, if everyone could own their own UTXO, I'm not sure you need multisig. I think multisig comes into play where you're trying kind of to share the custody of a UTXO.
How would everyone? But so this is I think the big question is, how does somebody? Let's pretend technically that you was possible to own your own UTXO. How would that be done? Like, where would the person store it?
Okay, so I think there's an entirely I think, unlike crypto, by the way, I think we're not exploring that enough. I think there's a lot of ways to make it easier for users to hold their keys without going into multisig. Multisig is one solution, but there are others. It is a matter of trust. Basically, you need to trust your keys with and to kind of integrate it into your existing trust profile. I'll give you an example with Breez, and we've been called out a lot on the fact that we don't share mnemonics in the Breez wallet. When you download the Breez wallet, we don't really let you have like the regular wallet interface where you need to write down your 12 words. We actually use Google and Apple, and the assumption is that if you're using Android, or if you're using your iPhones, you have trust in Google or Android. And most of the users want to leverage that trust in order to store their keys. Yes, it's not acceptable for all use cases. I won't trust Google with $1 million, but I would trust Google with $1,000. Me, personally, as a user. So I think there's a landscape of multiple solutions and multiple trust profiles that are unexplored. Yes, I agree with you. Multisig is going to be definitely a prominent solution in that landscape, but it's not the sole solution. I think there will be others. And if you take a look at other crypto projects on how they solve this product, there are integrating the saving and the trust profile into identity solutions and other solutions that are outside the multi-sig realm.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think the big thing where I can't, and it goes to talk in our book, but I just can't get away from, we have helped a lot of people like onboard to multi-sig. I was previously at Unchain, and it's less about multi-sig, it's more about human component, where I think like Fetty and also, where I think Fetty and Blockstream have really missed the boat, and what your reference took them time to get traction. And at the end of the day, like, money is a social construct, and you need counterparties that are what is the term? That are like vetted, that have liabilities, that have balance sheets.
That you already trust, right? As a human. Yeah. And that's what Saylor is talking about. I agree with Saylor in that regard. Like, if you have a bank and you trust the bank as a citizen of the United States, and if we'll be able to onboard the bank to Bitcoin and you trust the bank, why not have the bank custody your key? great. That's because it's a social contract that you already exist. I think it doesn't mean that Bitcoin doesn't offer a wide spectrum of other solutions and a more sophisticated banks to be built on top of the Bitcoin technology, and even allowing you the freedom to do peer-to-peer transactions or sell.
Yep. Yeah, the social construct's a big, I think, gap in the market. Like as you referenced, you need humans to pick up the phone and talk to and know they're accountable. And when everything's ephemeral and anonymous, it becomes very difficult to use products because money, again, you want recourse, you want accountability when it comes to your money.
Yes, and as a child, you want to get your allowance from your parents, and so you trust your parents, so you can trust your parents with a key. I think all these social constructs, like we need to think in a way that normal people are thinking, but there's a lot to do. What I'm trying to tell you, I think we haven't explored enough this space from a key saving, key holding, key protecting standpoint. Because we've built product for ourselves.
Yeah, and one just thing to bring up is like the unknown unknowns. This notion of like negative space. I don't even know if this is the right term, but effectively the thing that is missing that no one knows is missing. And what I would describe that as is not your keys, not your coins in 12 words. Everyone says it's easy. And sure, it's easy for anybody to do it for $10, $100, $1,000. If you study for 3 years, maybe for all of your wealth. The reality is it is very hard for somebody to park a material amount of their wealth with no counterparty alone on an island. And so sure, it keeps the system honest, but B, how much capital does it keep out of the space? And if the ultimate goal is to meet people where are there other solutions to bring to market? And then they can inevitably graduate. And if that solution is not good, well, it'll fail and the next one will come about. But to assume that that is the only thing while we sit at $1 trillion, like I'm convinced if we had better solutions, we'd be at $10 trillion because people are scared to put their money here because they do not want to end up in a landfill or hacked by North Koreans, which are the common tropes.
And that goes back to the orange peeling that Brian mentioned. Like why I'm against orange peeling is because basically part of orange peeling is people telling you, okay, that's what you need to do. You need to save this 12 board. But that's not the way you bring technology to market. You need to explore the space. You need to find solution, innovative solution that, and there's no one way to do things. No, there's a diversity of ways. And I agree with you. Like we haven't even scratched the surface when it comes to multi-sig products.
Yeah, and the only thing about custody, and maybe this goes for everything, but definitely custody is there is no perfect solution. There's just perfect trade-offs, and so everyone loves to argue about it. When the reality is there is no solution. It's everybody just has their own risk profile and attack surface. They're trying to and it's always moving. It's always changing depending on where they live, who their counterparties are, where their government's doing, what their family, how much capital or notoriety they have, and who's targeting them.
But you think we kind of have it figured out in terms of technology? You think that, like in terms of the products that we can build in order to help people do Bitcoin custody? I don't think we're there yet at all. Like we're just taking baby steps. What products do we have? Like
Agreed. Yeah, it's definitely true. I mean, even like somebody that wants to step in from an exchange or participate, it's very hard for them to even cryptographically. Like when you think about sharding of a private key, like that is generally pretty proprietary. Like somebody has to be very technical to be able to handle that on an individual level. Because outside of that, you're using a ledger, Trezor, or Cold Card to secure, or you're having to do TPMs and the whole process. But even that alone, that being more universal would open up more ability or more of a design surface for people to think about custody.
Yeah, but even I'll just give you an example from something that it's not technology at all. Like why there's no company like Brink's or something that are opening like physical location guarded that people can save their keys there. Like why don't we have that in place? I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that.
You're right, because we talks globally with key holders, and one of the things I've always envisioned was the wherever the bullion depositories are, right, where people recognize Switzerland, Singapore, Germany, like they're primed to be key holders. not only
Yeah.
from their clients, from their perspective, right? As gold, Bitcoin eats at gold.
They know
you
how
can just,
to save stuff. Yeah.
they can save it, and they can also monetize from the value, the demonetization of the gold. It's a perfect
Yeah.
synergy for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This has been a fascinating conversation, boys. I know we're bumping up on time and want to be respectful of your time, Roy. Was there anything else you wanted to or mention, or where can people find you and learn more about Breez and what you guys are doing?
So our website is breez.technology, Breez without an E at the end, Breez. So our website, feel free to take a look at the Medium, our
Put it
Medium
in the show
blog,
notes.
where I post a lot of articles about things that annoy me in Bitcoin. Yeah, I'm easily reachable. Feel free to DM me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on whatever.
Roy, thanks so much for coming on. It was an awesome episode. Like you said, we just got to see where it goes, and I think it went to a lot of good places. And look forward to having you on again.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Roy. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the show. If you found the information valuable, please share the episode with a friend or leave a rating on your favorite podcast app. All the links we discussed in today's show will be in the show notes inside your podcast app. Before we finish, a quick reminder that Onramp Media is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and nothing should be construed as investment or legal advice. Regardless of where you are on your Bitcoin journey, we'd love to hear from you. Visit onrampbitcoin.com/contact to schedule a consultation with one of our private client advisors.